So I discovered a couple of interesting things. One was these tone changes. But then this other really strange thing that I discovered was that I could move the loud spots around. So I decided that loud meant more energy. And if it was going to be loud anywhere, it should probably be loud in the energy center, right? Because wherever we have a chakra, we also have a nerve plexus. So it's like, okay, there'd be more activity, more energy going on there. So I discovered that what I could do, like if I found it loud, like over somebody's hip, for example, and maybe they had some pain in that hip, I could actually stick a fork in the loud spot and I could move it. And then it wouldn't be loud over there anymore. It would be loud here. Right. And it was the strangest thing. It's almost like sticking a magnet in a pile of iron filings and just kind of it really felt like that. And then people would say things like, I feel really centered. And so I developed this little practice of like finding the loud spots and, away from the midline and click it. I call it click, drag, and drop. I would click on it and then drag it and then drop it.
And
And so that was this little protocol that I developed. And I did that for 15 years.
hello and welcome. My name's Campbell. This is Autodidactic Channel, and today we have another interview, and we've got Eileen McKusick with us. And you basically you've been studying energy fields and in their relation with health and frequency, something that I talk about a lot on my channel, and you use the tuning forks a lot as well. And I sort of saw your channel and your work, and of course the link will be down below. Go across and check out Eileen's channel, give her a sub and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm really interested in your work, and I didn't realize until recently that you've done a lot of work on this. You've like done your, now I've lost the word, but you've studied your extra, what's it called? Thesis? Is that it?
My master's thesis.
Master's thesis. There we go. There we go. So yeah, you're right into the whole science behind this and everything, aren't you? So yeah, I'd love to pick your brain. So how did you get into all this in the start? How did you come across energy?
I was on my own healing journey. I became bulimic when I was 17, and when I was 18, I tried to stop and I couldn't. And it was my first experience of having a sense of this inner division where my conscious mind wanted to change my behavior and my subconscious mind had taken over. And I couldn't stop, which is very alarming to find yourself as an addict of anything and to feel like you don't have control over yourself. And so I started reading self-help books back in so this would have been 1987, and basically read everything I could get my hands on. And over the course of 3 years of pretty much continual study, I came to several realizations. One was that I'd been programmed by my culture to have body dysmorphia, to be sick in the head around my body and food. Like that had come to me as programming. And it wasn't really my fault. And my mom grew up in World War II in Belfast. My mom was born in Australia, in Melbourne. And her family was from Belfast, but they went back to Belfast for a visit, and World War II broke out. They were stuck in Belfast. They were bombed out of their homes several times. The aftermath of the war, they had no food. And my mom couldn't even understand my sickness, because here I was in a very different world that was filled with so much food, right? And so much junk food. And she said to me, I don't understand this. This is a disease of your time. And it very much was. She didn't have enough to eat. She was too skinny. And so, so I realized that it wasn't my fault. So that was huge to realize that I was programmed. And the second thing I realized was that it was my hand and my mouth. And if I wasn't in control of my behavior, who or what was? There was nobody that was going to come save me from myself. And it was completely up to me to figure out how to fix myself. And those two things got me to stop purging, but it was very hard to stop binging. I was very, very addicted to sugar. And to make matters worse, I opened a restaurant, a cafe with my family when I was 20. And I was surrounded. It was like being an alcoholic in a bar. I was just surrounded by cookies and cakes and ice cream and like everything.
Mm.
And the restaurant was busy and I was doing it with two older brothers. So I had family stress, I had customer stress, I had food stress. And after 4 years of this, where the restaurant just exploded, it grew very much and very fast. And I had been working 100-hour weeks on my feet. I ruined my back. I ruined my adrenals. I was just emotional toast and pretty much just threw in the towel and decided that I was going to go to massage therapy school because I thought that maybe I wanted to be a naturopath, but I didn't go to college right out of high school. I was like, I don't want to go to school for 12 years to become a doctor. So let's just start with massage because that's easy. And I was, when I left the restaurant and I went to school and I got healthy and I was like, okay, that's good. I'm never going back to the restaurant. But then my mom was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And within 6 weeks, she was dead after a very bad
Gosh,
botched surgery.
sorry to hear that.
And my dad was handicapped. So this is kind of another factor in my journey was that my father had a massive stroke when I was 10 that reverted him pretty much back to infancy. And he had to learn to walk and talk all over again. And my mom had been taking care of him every day for 15 years. And, when I was a kid, I used to pray that he would get better. It was so upsetting to me what had happened to him physically, what was happening to my mom emotionally, caregiving him. So I think that definitely played a role in my wanting to help people to improve their health because it really shattered my life as a kid to go through that kind of health crisis with my parents.
Mm.
So my dad was still there, the restaurant was still there, and I kind of ended up having to come back and fill my mom's shoes, but was really determined to continue my education about health and human potential, science and spirituality. I was really troubled by this divide between science and spirituality. It seemed really wrong to me. I wanted to understand how to heal that nonsense. And as a researcher, Cambell, that one rabbit hole leads to another and another and another, and you find yourself sort of following a trail of crumbs of information, right? And it just kind of opens you up. And so my trail of crumbs led to vibrational healing. And this was back in 1996. So there wasn't a lot out there. And I got every book I could on the use of color, sound, music, and healing. And it just made a lot of sense to me. It really resonated. If on a fundamental level, everything is really just frequency is waves in space, right? There isn't any matter. And then we're waves in space. So treating vibration with vibration just
Makes
seemed
sense.
elegant.
Mm.
And I was finishing off my stack of books and I got a catalog in the mail that had a set of tuning forks for healing in it. And at the time, I was doing massage part-time on the side. I just had a few clients a week, mostly friends. And so I recruited them to be guinea pigs. And I started playing with this new set of forks that I got. And I'm completely self-taught. So I never really took instruction from anybody. The forks themselves were the C major scale. And they came with a little tiny instruction book. It said use C in the root chakra, D in the sacral chakra, E in, and so on up to crown with B. So I took my forks and I activated them. And now I thought that the note of C was going to sound like a C. I thought that I would activate it and it would produce an objective tone. But what I discovered was that it didn't. And that as I activated a fork and I sort of moved it around different parts of the body, it would sound very different in different places. So some places it would go really loud. Other places it would go very soft, like it was being sucked in. Even if I struck it hard, it would like the sound would disappear. Some places it would sound full of static. Other places it would have like a wobble in it. And when I first started explaining this to people, what I was observing, of course, in Connecticut, where I was in the 1990s, this whole idea of sound healing with tuning forks was just absurd to people. And I encountered a lot of dismissive skepticism. And so people told me, oh, that's just room acoustics. That's the Doppler effect.
Mm.
That's what's going on. And I said, I understand room acoustics. I understand the Doppler effect. Then I can have the same person in the room twice in the same room and they sound different. Like there's something else going on here. Of course, early on, I didn't understand what was happening at all. But I remember there was one time when I was working with somebody who had pain in their shoulder, and I held the tuning fork right over the shoulder, and the tone went sharp. It went very sharp and bright and loud. And he could hear it. And I held it over the other shoulder. It sounded normal. I put it over here and it sounded sharp again. And he said, I have sharp pain. He's like, that kind of sounds like it feels. So I just kept on activating the fork and holding it over his shoulder. And after just a little while, it stopped sounding sharp. And it just sounded like the other one again. And he got up off the table and he rotated his shoulder and he was, oh my God, all of the pain is gone. And we were both astonished because neither one of us knew what to expect. I mean, you can't say it's a
Mm,
placebo effect. We didn't have a clue. I didn't know that was going to happen. He didn't know that was going to happen. It just sort of happened. And so, and then people were reporting things like, wow, I slept better than last night than I have in a long time, or I haven't followed my partner all week. And then they'd be like, do that sound thing on me again. And so, in very short order, my massage practice transitioned into a sound healing practice. But I was also interested in all aspects of vibrational medicine. And so I got 100-watt light bulbs in every color of the spectrum and a gooseneck lamp. And so people would come in and I determined where they were the weakest and I'd screw in the bulb and like put it right over their energy center. I had a surround sound stereo with a subwoofer under the table and I would play certain musical selections as well as the tuning fork work. But what happened in time was the lamp broke. I couldn't find another one like it. I moved my office to a place where I couldn't have the subwoofer. I was like, I gotta have the subwoofer. There's no point in that. So I ended up just with the forks and I use them just like that. Basically, what I discovered. So I discovered a couple of interesting things. One was these tone changes, but then this other really strange thing that I discovered was that I could move the loud spots around. So I decided that loud meant more energy. And if it was going to be loud anywhere, it should probably be loud in the energy center, right? Because wherever we have a chakra, we also have a nerve plexus. So it's like, okay, there'd be more activity, more energy going on there. So I discovered that what I could do, like if I found it loud, like over somebody's hip, for example, and maybe they had some pain in that hip, I could actually stick a fork in the loud spot and I could move it. And then it wouldn't be loud over there anymore. It would be loud here. Right. And it was the strangest thing. It's almost like sticking a magnet in a pile of iron filings and just kind of it really felt like that. And then people would say things like, I feel really centered. And so I developed this little practice of like finding the loud spots and, away from the midline and click it. I call it click, drag, and drop. I would click on it and then drag it and then drop it.
and
And so that was this little protocol that I developed. And I did that for 15 years. And then one day I discovered a loud spot about 2.5 feet off of somebody's body.
oh,
Very strange accident, the way that it happened. So this particular person was a woman who had pain and a sense of pulling in her jaw and her neck and down into her shoulder. And she tried all different kinds of things, osteopath, chiropractor, acupuncture, massage, like nothing had fixed it for her. And she was in a lot of discomfort. She heard about me and she came in to give it a try. So I was doing what I always do, which was kind of like holding the fork over the area where the person was complaining to just listen to the signal and kind of assess what was going on. And then all of a sudden, there was this really loud, strange noise out my window. And I'm in the middle of nowhere in the mountains of Vermont, and there's nothing around, right? So I go to the window and I look, I don't see anything. I turn around and I start walking back to the table. And for whatever strange reason, I activated the fork when I was like 6 feet away from her. And so I'm walking towards her with the activated fork, and all of a sudden, like right here, it goes loud. And then as I come over here, it goes soft again. And I was like, what? That was weird. I go back and I investigate again. Sure enough, like there's this bubble right here that's loud. It's like, that's really strange. It's a loud spot, but it's like way out here. What's going on with that? And
mm,
I wasn't sure what to do with it. I was like, oh. But I'd been doing this, moving these loud spots to the midline, over the body. So I
yeah.
was like, well, let's just try that. So I clicked on it and dragged it. And it felt really weird to be dragging it that far. And then when I got to the throat and it dropped, there was really like this feeling of like it was sucked in. And then all of a sudden it was really loud over her throat. Well, she went home and the next day she called me and she said, Eileen, all of that pain and pulling, it's gone. And we were both astonished. And I was extremely curious. So the next people who came in, and I was only seeing maybe 2 to 3 people a week, if that.
Mm.
And because I had another business that I was doing, because I didn't really want to be a tuning fork healer. You know, for many, many years, I've been doing this 27 years. It was a tough row to hoe. I just want to
Yeah.
tell you that there's a lot of skepticism, a lot of just outright rejection of it, you know, which doesn't, I don't care how thick your skin is, like nobody likes to just be dismissed like
Mm.
that, you know? And I was like, but
Yeah.
it's actually really cool. But, so, so, so the next people that came in, I started as far away as I could in my room. It was like 7 feet away from the table. And I started combing through this empty space. And I discovered all kinds of things. I discovered what felt like walls, what felt like channels, what felt like eddies, what felt like voids. Like there was this whole terrain, this textural, tonal terrain that was there. And that the tuning forks almost, they acted almost like an invisible ink decoder. And they kind of revealed what was going on.
Mm.
And so when I started exploring the field and working in the field, finding loud spots in the field and moving them to midline, my therapeutic outcomes became really dramatic. Like they'd already been pretty cool, you know, enough to keep me doing it, even though it was weird.
Mm.
But they started to become very dramatic. And people were reporting all kinds of things like pain they'd had for years, gone, anxiety, gone in just a few sessions. It was really kind of stunning to me, actually, that this was happening because it all just seems so strange to me.
Mm.
But in the course of my explorations, I started to discover a pattern. I started to discover a pattern. And it came in like, it was sort of like a blind fumble in the dark because I'm kind of learning this sonic braille language
Mm.
with these momentary flashes of illumination. So the tuning forks will initially resonate with whatever distortion is present, right? So it's a physics principle of resonance. If I stick a fork in a certain zone in your field that's wonky, I'm going to hear that. Like it's those standing waves are going to intersect the waves of the fork. And in the overtones and undertones, this information comes through. And so it's kind of like music. So,
Yeah.
Campbell, if you and I are listening to a sad song, I don't need to say to you, this song is sad. Because you'll be like, duh. I can tell the song is sad, right?
Yeah.
Well, how can we tell it's sad? Because we feel it, because we resonate, right? Because there's something about that tonal quality that matches our own tonal quality, and we resonate with that.
Mm.
So I started to notice that every time I was working in the area off somebody's left shoulder, that I'd hit these spots where the fork would kind of bog down and it would sound sad. And so what was really interesting is that I work with my, I guess, intuition, although I don't really like that word, but a phenomenon that I call my mail slot, like MAIL, like mail slot in a
Okay.
door, and it
Yes.
opens, a little letter drops in. And I perceive it it's like in the back of my head, where at the top of the spine. And it's like there's this little trap door there. And so I'd get into this wonky spot, and the mail slot would open, a little note would drop in, like a post-it note, and it would say something like sadness, age 12.
Wow.
And so I'd say to the person, did something really sad happen when you were 12? And they would say, oh, yeah, that's when my grandmother died and we were so close and I loved her so much and we never really talked about it. And I still get sad thinking about it. Right? You're like, oh, interesting. and so I noticed that every time I was encountering sadness, that it was off the left shoulder. Or I'd get into something like off the right side of the solar plexus. Something would drop in anger, age 19. What happened when you were 19 that's really angry? Oh, that's when my dad kicked me out of the house. And oh, we were, I'm still mad at him for that, whatever kind of, just
Mm.
kind of thing. So I started to observe that the field appeared to be both sort of compartmentalized and be holding the records of every time we generated particular emotions. They seemed to
Wow.
find their way into storage in particular zones.
Their own
But I
little
also
akashic
observed that it
records.
seemed to be, yeah,
Mm.
that it also appeared to be timelined, meaning that as we were generating this information in our body, it was moving away from our body out into our field. So if I was working on somebody that was 60, I would find information from their birth at the outer boundary of their field. So I discovered that the field had a boundary, which kind of surprised me. Around 6 feet away, I encountered something that was like loud, kind of hard to move area. And I discovered, wow, that doesn't move. This is an area of additional charge, and I can't move it with my click, drag, and drop. And so it occurred to
Oh,
me,
okay.
because I think sometimes when we think of something like an aura, there's
Yeah.
this thought that it like kind of diffuses outward, it gets finer and finer and kind of goes away. So I was
Mm,
surprised to discover a boundary.
yeah.
And the boundary is maybe an inch thick. And
Wow.
when I had the fork
Wow.
inside that membrane, I was reading the information of that person's gestation. Then just inside that membrane, coming towards the body, was the experience of their birth.
Earth.
And it
Wow.
was like dropping a needle on an album and reading the vibrational record of life. And so if they were 60 and they had something traumatic happen when they were 30, I would find that memory like 3 feet away from me.
Halfway in. Yeah, right.
And so I discovered basically, yeah, this whole thing about how our energy field, or I use the term biofield, we'll call it our body's electrical system, isn't storing our memories in our brain. It's storing them electromagnetically in
Yeah,
standing
right.
waves in the field around our bodies. We have this invisible cloud storage system that holds all our memories, and we view our life through the lens of all of our
Of
experiences. And
course.
that every time that we had a experience of dysregulation, it's like you're like a little EKG machine and your needle's always going. You're like, oh, groovy, I'm
Mm,
groovy, I'm groovy. I'm not groovy, right? And
yeah.
then that memory. And so when I would come in with a tuning fork, I would find these areas where chaos was happening. And I discovered that there was charge held there. Like there was like a freeze and charge. There was energy tied up in that
That's
traumatic
the
experience.
charge. Yeah.
And if I just held the fork there and reflected that sound back to the body, what would happen was the density would start to kind of break up. And it would almost like the energy would uncouple from the waves that it was held in. And then I could use the tuning fork to move the energy. So the chaos would settle down, the energy would free up, and I could bring it back into what I now understand as the midline of the toroidal structure that is our electrical system. But I didn't know that at the time.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's to do with flow and yeah, right. Wow. Holy dolly. That's a lot. And it's interesting that you say there was an edge because yeah, they when people talk about auras, they kind of say, oh, it just they keep going out and keep going out and keep going out, but clearly they don't. And 6 feet's an interesting number, isn't it? I think we've all heard 6 feet in the last couple of years,
It,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and that's
everything,
on average. The
yeah.
field expands and shrinks, but this is average for most people.
Mm. And so yeah, wow. So basically, yeah, like our energy field is our history, right? And that's what we see through because it's surrounding us. So that's how we interact with the world, literally. And so if there's stuff that's sitting there that's not resolved, it's going, that's the lens. Because I've been talking a bit recently about charge. You mentioned charge, and when we experience things, we tend to put them in charge, right? Either positive or negative. That's a charge, right? And then when we charge a thing, it becomes in charge of us. So which means next time we get into that same experience, we just do the same thing because it's in charge, right? So that's kind of what you're doing is clearing those charges out so that we can then act instead of react on a very, that's obviously the first step. And
Exactly.
then after that comes the healing. But wow, okay, I just gotta keep, yeah, you're blowing my mind a bit here. So keep going.
Well, so at the time that I started exploring the field, and like I said, that as I worked in the field and I started to discover what I now call the biofield anatomy, where I basically kind of map the whole field and basically map the mind. And I realized that this is our conscious mind, this is our subconscious mind. I would even go so far as to call it our soul. Because if you think about it, when you're alive, your light is on. And when you die, your light goes out.
Mm,
And what is it? It's your electrical system that is no longer operative. Well, we know that light can't really be destroyed. And this idea that if there is such a thing as reincarnation, that the soul brings the memories of every lifetime along with them, right? And you look at child prodigies and people who are just unbelievably good as small children, that memory could be, already accumulated in their little light bubble that is them, that
Mm,
they brought through lifetimes. So, that's definitely a possibility. But either way, it's a biological system that we're not told about. It's sort of a place of where we're missing the forest for the trees, because a lot of people know, oh yeah, my heartbeat is electric, or my brain waves are electric, or my blood carries a charge. Some people know that their bones are piezoelectric and make electricity when they're compressed. Our fascia and our collagen are all semiconductors that are constantly sending light and information. So this goes way beyond just the nervous system. Every cell needs a certain amount of electrical charge in order to function. So this all points to the fact that we are running current through us. And anything where you have moving current, you have a magnetic field. So I would say that our body's electrical system is the electric current that runs through us that keeps everything running, as well as the magnetic field that surrounds it. And that's our electrical system in its entirety.
mm.
Now, early on, when I was using the tuning forks to move this stuff, I'm like, this is stuff. Like it's got mass. It's got a substance to it. I was very puzzled. I was like, what is the stuff that I'm moving? And what law of physics determines that a vibrating tune fork in my hand can move it? Right? It was so confusing. Like I didn't have any context for it at all.
Mm.
So what ended up happening was at the time I I owned a kettle corn business. I don't know if you know what kettle corn is, but back in 2004, you could only buy it's popcorn that's both sweet and salty.
Oh,
And in 2004, you could only ever buy this at things like fairs and festivals. You couldn't buy it in grocery stores. And so I decided to introduce this product into grocery stores. And so I was making, I'm in Vermont, and so I was making maple kettle corn, and it was absolutely flying off the shelves. I was hand popping it all, delivering it to 50 stores. People would tell me that they'd open the bag and they just eat the whole thing. They just eat the whole thing. And so I had all of these addicts out there that were buying my kettle corn. So my plan was to blow it up and then to like sell it to Frito-Lay or something. So I was like, I had great timing in the marketplace. I was like the first one in the marketplace. I had a proven product. I had a great profit margin. Like I was good to go. I didn't need to be a healer, you know,
Mm.
and especially a sound healer. But then one day I got a message in my mail slot that was more than a post-it note. It was kind of like certified mail. I came in with this glow about it, and it was very clear. I call it my prime directive.
Wow.
And it said the world needs harmony more than it needs another snack food. And said you need to go to college, get degrees, learn and teach about sound, understand the science behind this, advance the science behind this, cover the globe with biofield tuning, and awaken an army.
Wow.
And I was like,
Okay. That's a prime
well,
directive.
okay. I was like, I know, but I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna get like
Can
eaten
we just sell a
alive,
business and
like
have a
everyone's
holiday
gonna
together?
rake me over the coals, like
Yeah.
a holiday first. Yeah, I was went into it pretty reluctantly because I just didn't want to suffer the slings and arrows of being the tuning fork lady working with
Yeah.
energy
The
fields.
mad, mad
We have a
hippie
very
healer.
skeptical,
Mm.
cynical world out there.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. But I really couldn't argue with it. And so and it just so happened that there was a Northern Vermont University was 3 minutes down the road from where I lived, and they had one of the only undergraduate programs in wellness and alternative medicine in the country. And so I ended up selling my popcorn business and enrolling in college as an adult. And I completed my undergraduate and my master's degree. I got a master's in integrative education in 5 years. And I wrote a master's thesis called Exploring the Effects of Audible Sound on the Human Body and its Biofield. And biofield was really a key phrase there for me, because when I first started gathering literature for my literature review, I was looking in PubMed, Medline, places like that for human energy field and aura, and turning up nothing, like nothing. And I was like, what am I even doing trying to write an academic treatise on this subject? Like, I'm too far in left field for this even to work. But then I read a book by Gary Schwartz called The Energy Healing Experiments. And in that book, I was introduced to the term biofield. And so when I started looking up biofield in PubMed and Medline, I started finding articles, people like Beverly Rubik, Shamini Jan, Paul Mills, and had enough to actually and start to understand, what was going on, and was very successful as an adult learner doing this deep dive into academia. And it really revealed a lot to me about what was happening. So that thesis was published in 2012, and it was a very well polished paper. My thesis committee said, Eileen, if you're going to write an academic paper on this topic, it has to be above excellent. And they really held me to that. And so my paper won an academic excellence award. It had 5 editors. It's a very, very well polished paper. So I decided to submit some of the chapters to Inner Traditions, and then that turned into my first book, Tuning the Human Biofield, which was published in 2014. And I started a YouTube channel too. And then I started teaching it in 2010. I had a group of clients and friends who wanted to learn it. And one of my brothers said to me, he's like, can other people do what you do? I said, I don't know if other people, I don't think I have a special talent here, but so I started teaching my first group of students, and sure enough, all of them could comb through the field, find when they hit resistance, stay there until it let go, bring things to center, what I call an adjustment. They could hear, they could feel, they could sense, and then they started getting the same therapeutic outcomes that I was.
Wow.
So, so since then, 2010, we've thousands of students all over the world have awoken an army, and it's so simple, it's so elegant, and it helps with all kinds of things. Because whether it's our mental body, our physical body, our emotional body, our relational body, it's all vibrational. And so I've successfully treated pain, like on the spot. Like, people can go from like 8, 9, 10 in pain, 20 minutes. Like, I can get them down to a 1 or a 0. Obviously not all pain, but a surprisingly large amount can just, because what I've discovered, Cambell, is that most of the things that create disorders in us, like anything you can think of, and nobody's been able to come up with anything yet that isn't, is tension based. It's a consequence of some kind of tension that we're holding in the wrong place that is arresting flow. So when you have tension in your body, kind of chronic, low level subconscious tension, you end up with inflammation. Well, what is inflammation but an electrical jam up, right? It's hot. Well, that's because there's too much juice there. You've got an excess of electrical current there. And so what I'm doing, which I understand now, so from a physics perspective, magnetic fields guide and inform electric currents. So when I find a sticky, loud spot in the field that sort of like appears to me, and this is all hypothetical, to be like a magnetic blob. And so because there's a density of magnetic charge there, it is pulling electric current over there. So for example, the right shoulder relates to, in the biofield anatomy, a tendency to say yes when we mean no, to put other people's needs ahead of our own, to be an accommodator, a caretaker, that kind of person. And so when we go into a kind of imbalance like that, mentally and emotionally, we're pulling our magnetic field over that way, which is then pulling electricity there. And so I can come in with my fork, find that magnetic blob, lob, stick a fork in it, and adjust the magnetic field, which then causes the electricity to follow. So that too much voltage through the wires over there now moves to the midline, and the person doesn't have pain anymore. So it's like an adjustment where we
Yeah.
kind of pick up the charge that's in that imbalance part of the field, bring it to midline, and then the body fixes itself, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to visualize it. So all these blockages, I mean, I guess they basically create their own little field that's interacting with the main field, and it's like, yeah, it becomes a blockage, and that creates I guess the vesica piscis is the magnetic where they're interacting, and that's what you're dragging is. I mean, have you thought that deep? I mean, I guess it's very
I
experiential,
haven't
isn't
brought
it?
the vesica Pisces into it.
No, yeah, I'm big into the
um,
vesica piscis. I think I don't know. There's something there with that. Um, But this is what we've been told in all the esoteric, all the, old religious books and theosophy, and that they always tell us, right? Everything is energy, or they may use different words. Everything is spirit, or everything is whatever. And this is what we're being told. And of course, we find ourselves in a world that yells at us, no, everything's physical. If you have a problem, you need to take something physical, and all these medicines and things. So do you think, because this is the thing is, with all this food and they love to tell us, oh, it's all to do with, calories and vitamins and minerals. Do you think it's more energy, like as far as, do you think it's the intention? Like, it's like if someone's, drinking a Coke, right? And they're like, oh my God, this is so bad for me, but I love it. It's probably going to make them sick. But if someone's drinking Coke and they're like, oh, I love this, it gives me energy. Do you think that our intention is more important than the physical what we're taking in?
I
Like,
think it depends on your level of consciousness and health.
okay,
I think that the stronger your mind, the more you have control over that
okay,
sort of thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Certainly, there's been so much work done on the placebo effect, the nocebo effect. I mean, the mind is very, very powerful.
exactly, yeah.
And, I personally like this, the more my field has become organized, I did this for 15 years before I ever had it done to me. And
Oh,
my first students, when they started working on me, I had a bunch of low level health issues. I had 7 plantar warts on my left foot that I couldn't get rid of. I had chronic mid back pain. I had very poor digestion, gas, bloating, heartburn, indigestion, stomach aches like regularly. Uh, I had just low level angst,
mm,
just not, and this
out
was
of whack.
after
Yeah.
decades of deep self-help work,
Mm.
but I hadn't cracked the nut. And as soon as I started receiving sessions, so the first thing that went away were the planners warts, like they disappeared, which was kind of amazing. My low back pain, my mid back pain went away, my digestion improved. Now I'm 54. I don't have any health issues. I don't have any pain. I don't have any I have perfect digestion. Like I don't have anything wrong with me because my field is so well groomed
So
that my electrical
in
system, like
tune, yeah.
everything is just in a state of flow.
I mean, we get these words and they're all through the language, aren't they? I mean, they even talk about cars and tuning up, but when you're in tune and in balance and all these things, it is health. So
It's health.
it's how, yeah. So you mentioned before you've looked into Tartaria, and of course, in the old world, we have all these things called cathedrals and churches, and apparently where the glory of God lives. And of course, we have a lot of sound in there. We have organs and choirs and bells and all this stuff. And it's my sort of theory, I guess, that this was all a frequency system, and it was to tune people, then to keep them healthy and to keep them balanced, and to maybe for other reasons, but literally to interact with the population, but through frequency. What are your thoughts there?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting. I started I first got hip to Tartaria in 2018
Wow,
and
early.
started watching some videos, kind of forgot about it. And then in 2020, when I had a little more time on my hands, kind of dove back in again. It's so fascinating. I definitely come from the awareness that we've been lied to about everything, like everything.
Yeah.
And I question everything. I'm a very skeptical person. It's one of the reasons why I've taken offense when people have been skeptical about what I do. I'm like, what, you think I'm not a skeptic? Like, I did
Mm.
this work for years and I didn't even believe in it. It took me writing a master's thesis, getting 10,000 hours under my belt, training other students before I finally started to be like, oh, maybe this is legit. Because, guys, I'll tell you what, it's a really strange thing to like walk towards somebody with a vibrating tuning fork. I'd be doing, I'm like, so weird. This is so weird. This is so weird. Is this really working? Am I really, you know what I mean? Like, I was so
Mm.
skeptical for so long because it was so strange. Um, but the with the Tartarian thing, I came across a quote that I found really interesting that really kind of like tied a bunch of things together for me. And it was a picture of all the bells, right? So there were all of these huge bells, gorgeous bells, bells everywhere. And then there's pictures of them all in like graveyards, and then they were
Yep.
turned into munitions, right? A
Yep.
lot of the bells were melted down in World War I and World War II. So these objects of coherence, of beauty, of light, of brightness, now are being used to
Weapons of
kill people,
war.
which I think
Mm.
is incredibly tragic and
Mm.
horrible. But this particular meme said that the bells kept the evil spirits away.
Yes.
Now that ties in to what I do with my tuning forks, because what I have found is that there are etheric parasites that feed off of imbalances in our energy field.
Definitely.
And early on, what's kind of cool about sound is that even though I'm a scientist and a researcher and I do peer reviewed published research on this sort of thing, you can't help but also enter into a shamanic realm when you use sound healing. So the tuning forks produce technically an infinite number of overtones and undertones, resonating all of these different levels of frequency that actually kind of reveal non-ordinary reality. They reveal subtler or finer aspects that we don't perceive with ordinary reality. So I started discovering ancestors showing up, or I could see guides. But I also started to see these things that looked like leeches that were, anywhere from a few inches in length. Some could be much longer. They had little like grapple things like moray eels do. They
Yeah.
latch
Yeah.
on to particular things. So if somebody was in a relationship where they were fighting all the time, or they're always yelling and fighting and arguing, that would make their energy come out, like it would be activating the right side of their throat. So instead of energy coming out through here with diplomatic, successful, peaceable communication, they were generating all of this charge over here. And so any place where charge was being generated and sustained in the field would attract parasites. Whether they were like eels, or whether, there's all kinds of different etheric beings that, just like
Mm.
leeches that you get in real life. You just like, you don't want a leech on you. You don't want these parasites on you either.
Yeah.
And so what we do in tuning is wherever that attachment zone is that something has muckled onto and is feeding off of, we just move that energy to center. And then the thing just falls away because it's like, right? So I don't necessarily see these things as bad or evil. I mean, life recycles unviable organisms. So anything that's unhealthy and is starting to decline is going to attract, like street dogs and how they get mange and lice and, fleas and things like that.
Mm.
If an energy, if a body is healthy and viable, it doesn't attract fungus or mold or parasites or things like that because it's full of vitality. So life doesn't need to come in with the things that break stuff down in order, to
Mm.
recycle it, basically. So I don't necessarily, I see just these things as part of nature and not necessarily, I mean, I know there's a whole thing about jinn and,
Yeah. 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 The
demons and things like
attachments
that.
and yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily talking about demons per se, but more like these kind of garden variety, just kind of parasites.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Wow.
But
So,
either way, no matter what it is, I mean, even demons are feeding off of a particular imbalance. So
mm,
the more that the system becomes orderly and honestly filled with love, light, God, life force, the more viable an organism you are. The lions, when they're hunting, you don't take you down. They take down the old and the weak.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So so this idea that I'm using sound to clear the field and to balance the field, to harmonize the field, to get the field in tune, resonant, ringing, healthy, is the same thing with about the bells, right? The
yeah,
bells keep the
yeah,
evil spirits away.
yes, yeah.
And so
It actually,
somehow,
so I was going to say that it says in some old books that they used to use that the Christians use bells to keep trolls away. Like literally, they use the word trolls, and it's like, oh, So there's this big thing about the frequency, like the well, I guess lower level, right? Frequencies don't like it because they don't, yeah. And that's of course what they've taken out,
yeah,
like
they just
in the
it
wars. They just ripped it all out, and now what do we find ourselves in? And what do we hear people talking about? All these, dark entities that are everywhere. So it's pretty interesting.
yeah, dark entities that are everywhere. And so when you become kind of accustomed to parasites in your own body and field, whether you recognize them as such or not, that kind of makes you tolerant of like parasitical governmental agencies or any kind of external parasite that's feeding on you as well. So we're all kind of dim and stuck and being fed on by both subtle things and larger organizations that are also parasitical. So we're not able to experience radiant health, sovereign beingness because we're being fed on all over the place.
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Having all our energy pulled, and I mean, and it's exactly like you say, what we see in the physical world. And I think ultimately everything's kind of an expression of everything, right? Whatever the energy's doing is what we experience in the physical world. So, and of course, lots of people seem to be waking up, and there's a lot of talk about this, shadow work. You got to do the shadow work and all that kind of stuff. Do you see that as the same kind of thing? Is that like the recapitulation? Is that sort of, can that be used as well to take out the charge? But the tuning forks are just a quicker way kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, this is it's just a very efficient way.
Just yeah,
My mom
yeah,
used to say
yeah.
when I was a kid that if there was an easy way to do anything, that child is going to find it. So I owned
Yeah.
a busy restaurant for 13 years. I'm extremely efficiency oriented. I hate wasting time. I hate other people wasting my time. I'm like, let's just solve the problem. Let's get down to business, whatever it is.
Yep, yep.
Tuning forks are super handy because somebody's having a panic attack. I can get them out of it. Somebody's in pain. I can get them out of it. I developed a relationship between a session between couples. So if I'm visiting friends and they're fighting, right, sit them down
Yeah,
in chairs
right.
facing each other and work on their blended field, get them to stop fighting. I'm a very good problem solver, and this is a very easy way. And again, it
Hmm.
doesn't fix everything,
But this is
but
the
we just
thing.
completed a study. Go
So it
ahead.
gives us our perspective, doesn't it? And that's what makes us fight and do all these stupid things is the wrong perspective. So clearly, you can change that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. So shadow work. What is shadow work? I mean, shadows are these undigested experiences where we experience from a shamanic perspective, right? From a shamanic perspective, whenever you have some kind of trauma, you experience what they call soul loss, like a piece of your soul breaks off and kind of stays in that spot. And that's exactly what I find. I'm like, wow, I'm going through the record of your life and I'm finding these
Uh,
areas of light and charge that are like stuck when you were 6 and this thing
uh,
happened. And when you were 23 and that thing happened. Very often, what it really feels like is like stuck sound. So, this idea that we have shadows is just parts of ourselves that haven't expressed. They haven't been seen, they haven't been heard. Those feelings haven't been digested and integrated. We haven't forgiven ourselves, we haven't forgiven life, we haven't forgiven other. And so we're just stuck. There are places where we're stuck. And
hmm.
so by coming in, by witnessing, like my ability is to be able to stick a fork in any part of your field that's dissonant and tell you exactly what memory that is. This is exact, depending on where it falls in the biofield anatomy. I'm like, okay, this is
Wow.
that X that, was abusive, and then was 3 years here, this zone, like, whoa, and then you're like, wow, him. And I make people cry all the time
Mm,
because we go in, we poke around in these tender zones and kind of pull up the memory and digest it, integrate it, take that energy that was stuck back in your past and actually like give it back to now. And
mm,
so that makes more of you available, right? Because any place where you've got stuck energy in the flow of your electrical system, it's not in circulation. And so the more you've pushed aside your emotions, the more I don't go there, or I'm not dealing with that, or the more you kind of don't digest or express, the more of your own life force you cut off from yourself. And then your battery starts to drop. Right. So our electrical system has an optimum zone of voltage. And I
mm.
always ask people, like, on a scale of 1 to 100, right? With 100 being like you're topped off, you're full of energy. This is your best zone. This is where you're living your best life, is at 100. Where does your battery meter fall? If you just ask yourself, very often a number will drop in. So did you get a number, Campbell?
Yeah, it's about 58 or so. Not 100, that's for sure.
About 50.
I, a bit
So you
low
could
at the
you could definitely
moment.
do to raise your voltage.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I've got
that's
a
a bit
a
low.
bit of an injury at the moment, so that might be contributing to that. It's kind of probably leaking a bit of energy. Uh,
Yeah. So tell me where your injury is, and I'll tell you what it's related to in the biofield anatomy.
okay, it's a good one. So I drove my car into a tree, 70 k's, no brakes, and I've my brachial plexus, and so I lost full use of my left arm for like a couple of months. And so it's my left arm, but it's and now I've got use of my arm, but not full use, and it's still pretty out there. So yeah,
Yeah.
my biofield's a bit
Okay. Well, so
distorted.
one of the things that yeah, I can see actually kind of looking at you that's what's going on. So in the biofield anatomy, so basically what I observed, people would come in and they had injuries from accidents. Okay. You think, oh, I had an accident and I just happened to randomly injure myself in this spot. I always found that they got injured in the place where their field was the most out of balance.
Yeah,
So, for example, I have a girlfriend who a teacher at 2 colleges, owns her own massage school, single mom, and has a massage practice. Like her whole life is around taking care of everybody else all the
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
And she called me a while back and she said, Eileen, I was out hiking and I fell. Guess where I injured myself?
Right
And I said,
side,
your
left
right
shoulder.
shoulder. And she said, yep. Yep. Okay. And then I was in a motorcycle accident. So you're not the only one with crazy things going on here, Campbell. I slammed my Ninja motorcycle into pavement going 50 miles an hour on July 2nd. I went down hard on my left side, and then the bike somehow got off me, and then I rolled 40 feet down the road and then landed face up in a ditch. And
Wow.
the only thing that I broke was the outside of my left ankle. I mean, I went down on my shoulder, my hip, like I slammed into the pavement. The person who pulled over behind me thought I was going to be dead in the ditch because of how hard I hit. Okay. The only place on my body where I had anything wrong with me prior to that accident was the outside of my left foot, where I had a small scaly rash. And I knew that there was still deep healing work to do in that left foot zone. And that is the only place that broke.
Well, I mean,
Right. And the
that's the
rest of my
thing.
field is
Yeah.
in really good shape, but
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I
So the
literally walked
left
away without a
shoulder.
scratch, but obviously one injury. But you should have seen the car. Like, I'm surprised. Like, it was
Yeah. That
destroyed.
you lived.
Yeah, yeah. Literally, I'm surprised I lived. Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, tell me left side.
Yeah.
So
So the
it's
left
pretty
shoulder
much
relates
left
to
arm. Yeah, the whole left arm
sadness.
at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So this is sadness that we don't express. And so very often when people have had sadness, and a lot of sadness that they haven't digested or expressed, that physical, that emotional pain finds a way to express physically.
Yeah.
It finds a way, right?
Mm.
So, I would guess that that was what you had going on, that you had some emotional pain that maybe you weren't letting yourself cry, you weren't letting yourself express, you weren't letting yourself feel. And then you had this accident, and that's where the injury happened, where
Mm.
that part of your field was out of balance and weak. Does that make sense to you?
Well, it
Based
does.
on
Yeah, yeah. Because if everything's energy, then what we're hitting is also energy, isn't it? So it would make sense that the weakest part of our energy field would be the one that would be, yeah, hurt or whatever. Yeah, susceptible.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And so they aren't random accidents,
Mm.
like I didn't break my hip, I didn't
Well,
break my
yeah, it's like you
shoulder,
said,
I
when
didn't break any ribs.
you hit the ground and rolled down the thing, but your energy was strong, right? It was fine. So your energy on the pavement, it was just energy on energy. It wasn't you on the pavement, really, was it? So because you had a strong energy
Right.
field, nothing happened, but you had that little chink that, yeah. So that makes perfect sense to me. So my injury is nervous. Well, they tell it's at its base. It's obviously more than that. But do tuning have you found that tuning forks work on all systems? Do they work on nervous systems as well?
I mean, it depends. Like if there's physical damage, like if somebody has a torn rotator cuff,
Yeah.
right? I can't necessarily, with my tuning fork, magically get that to knit. You know what I mean? But what I can do is relax the tension that's around it, any secondary or tertiary patterns of tension that are starting to come in. Just open up a little bit more space so that you get more blood flow, so that the
Mm.
body can get more juice there to fix it,
Well, the
right?
body heals itself. Yeah.
So if somebody has a pinch, the body heals itself. If somebody has a pinched nerve between vertebrae, I might not be able to do anything about that.
Yeah.
But anything that is because of a pattern of tension, we can help it to release and relax. I mean, even depression is like it's
Mm.
just stuck in a heavy spot. We can
Mm.
lift depression. And many people have three
Wow.
sessions, and they're like, "Wow, I just feel so much lighter." It's because you're not carrying around all that heavy, undigested energy stuck in your field anymore. You've digested it, you've integrated it, you've harmonized it. Our bodies are essentially self-tuning instruments, and the tuning fork acts kind of like a mirror in that it reflects back to the body what is going on, right? Well, it initially will resonate with whatever is going on. I worked with a guy, kind of reminds me of you a little bit, who was, I was working on him. I was combing through his field, and all of a sudden, my fork made the wonkiest sound. I mean, it got so heavily distorted, and he heard it, and he was like, "Wow!" He's like, "What's that?" And then so I plotted it on the timeline. I'm like, okay, this is around 18. I was like, what happened when you're 18? He said, oh, I went through the windshield of a car. Right. And you think about that whole experience of going through the windshield of a car, the crash, the whatever, the pain, everything afterwards. Like your whole signal that you're producing is going to be so distorted. And so just by hanging out in that spot, the tuning fork is providing a mirror. Listen to how you sound over here, right? You don't know that you have a poppy seed in your teeth and that your hair is a mess until you look in a mirror.
Yeah.
And then what do? Like we all will go to the room and be like, oh, put myself back in order. When the body hears, the body's organizing intelligence hears itself out of balance over there, that reflection, it immediately starts to work with it to fix itself. So the tuning fork also acts like a metronome. It's producing a steady, coherent rhythm so the body can organize its rhythm against it. It also produces a steady tone so the body can organize its tonal expression against it.
Mm.
And so basically, we're just providing that mirror, that metronome, and then it becomes like a magnet. And then I can like magnetically move what was stuck there out. Right.
Mm.
But all of it is helping the body to heal itself. I'm not healing you, and you're not intending to heal yourself. We're just providing your organizing intelligence with some really useful inputs that it can use to fix itself.
Mm. Yeah, putting it back in tune. Yeah. Now, I keep
Yeah.
thinking when you're talking, I keep seeing these pictures of people holding anks in their hand. All these pictures we get, and we've got these big tales of magic wands and, people holding stuff and doing this kind of stuff. Do you think there's some kind of relationship there to frequency healing? Do you think that's what they might have been doing?
I yeah, I do. And apparently they found lots and lots of tuning forks too. Although that's one of the like
Oh,
the things that the Smithsonian
yeah,
hides,
but yeah, it's at the bottom of the
like
ocean now.
they're
Yeah.
skeleton giants and things. Mhm, yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting. I don't necessarily, I'm not 100% convinced of reincarnation. But I don't believe in anything that I can't prove or I haven't had direct experience, right? I stay skeptical in things like that you have to go on faith.
Yeah.
But when the biofield anatomy started to reveal itself to me, well, one thing I was like, well, where is this information that's coming in my mail slot coming from?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
how is it
Right.
like some part of me knows this, right?
Yeah,
Like there's
yeah.
a knowing here, and these all of these mail slot drops are correct, right? So the mail slot helped me to map the field. Well, what's on the other side of that? So I learned in 2014, a person has become a good friend now, a woman by the name of Tiffany Barsotti. And I saw a talk she was giving and the slide that she had that there's apparently a minor chakra there that is called the alta major. And it's also known as the mouth of God or the word of God. And so I'm sitting in this talk and I said to the person next to me, I'm like, that's my mail slot. And so
Wow.
is it God? I don't know. Is it my soul? Because I'm pretty sure that if there is such a thing as reincarnation, I was doing stuff like this in Egypt a long time ago.
Mm.
But I wasn't the same kind of human that we are now. Like I feel like I was a different kind of human, or it's like just slightly different. So I've been very intrigued by Onks, and I tried to find one to just buy. Well, you can't buy a full size Ankh anywhere. So I had someone who was a blacksmith make me one, but I think it really depends on like what the metals are that are used. But I would imagine it has that same ability, like the tuning fork does, to like move energy.
Mm.
It really it seems that way.
Well,
But certainly,
mm.
there's ample evidence of sound healing chambers and like or the cathedrals that we were talking about
Yeah,
before, like
exactly.
they knew.
And this is the thing, with
Yeah.
the gods, it was the gods who had the anks, and it's all the ways, either linked to God or magic, isn't it? And it's all frequency. When you look into it, it seems to all be frequency. That's their magic, right? Is it's basically that
Yeah.
it's that they know everything's frequency, and they just don't want to let us know that, because then they can open up these blockages which they can go and feed on and let their friends in and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. When I was writing my thesis, I was really amazed at the dearth of information on sound. There were music therapy studies. There were like therapeutic touch or people using their hands in the field. But I couldn't find any research on just sound and what specific sound frequencies did. Like there was nothing. And then it occurred to me that the reason why I couldn't find anything is because DARPA and the military were doing all the research on sound and using it to create weapons. Once
Yes.
again, taking something like the valves that heal you,
Yeah.
and weaponizing it.
Have you seen the pictures from World War One? And they've literally got these things that look like big tubers, and they're weapons. They're big sound weapons. They were using them. Again,
Oh,
we
wow,
never
no,
got
I didn't
told
see that.
this. Yeah, I'll send you some pictures. Like
Yeah.
they're literally these big weapons, and in Australia, in all the stuff that happened last year, when everyone went to Canberra and kind of said we don't agree, they use sound weapons on them. So
Yeah.
I mean, this is
Yeah,
the
a lot of
thing,
people
right?
told me that actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So so
Yeah.
they,
So,
right?
I'm here to
They
kind of help
know.
counterbalance that. We got to win the good vibes, the coherent vibes. This is what we want.
Well, this
This is
is
what
the
we all
thing.
want
Yeah.
to experience.
Mm, high vibes, right? Beach Boys had it right. Good vibrations, and it's
No,
told to us in the
not high
spelling.
vibes. Well, okay, so I don't use that terminology, and I'll tell you why. uh, because technically it's incorrect.
Yeah.
And
If
for
you're
me,
going up
you
to
know,
it.
as a technician, as a writer, yeah, this idea that higher is better is it's linear, it's hierarchical, and it's simply not true. It's not high vibes we're after, okay? It's in tune
Well,
vibes, it's
yeah.
coherent
You don't want high
vibes,
vibes for your bass sharp.
clear vibe.
Mm,
Yeah, exactly. Like, what about the bass? Everybody loves those bass tones, right? You need to have low brainwave frequencies to sleep and to rest. So
mm.
we're not looking for high. When we become healthier, our consciousness expands in every direction.
Yeah.
We expand. We
Mm,
go from these all of these micro and macro tensions and contractions that we've huddled into because of teachers, because of parents, because of governments, right? And so as we start to heal and relax and we release, the process is one of expanding, not going up.
yes.
So when people talk
Yeah.
about raising your vibration, that's not, it's like, no, because that also stops us from accepting our humanness. You know, there's definitely this sort of movement in new age and healing, and this, you know, that you're gonna become Christ-like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, Christ consciousness is vibrating up at 1,000, you know, and shame is down at 200, and so we don't want to feel the low bad vibes of shame. We just want to be up here. But all of your emotions are really messages to help keep you healthy, just like your feeling sense keeps you safe from hot or too
Yeah.
cold or anything like that. You're like, oh, move away. Like
Mm,
anger and shame and sad, like all of it plays a role in informing us what we need to do to stay healthy. So it's so important that we feel all our feelings, that we validate all of our feelings. And this is something, this is the big piece that's missing from medicine. And even like when people talk about mental health, like
it's
most of us were raised in homes that had an abstinence only kind of response to emotion, right? You
yeah.
know, you could take that nonsense to your room or hush your mouth or big boys don't cry or don't, no, no, no. You know what I mean? Like, don't emote.
Yeah.
And so we just end up stuffing
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And then there's no end of booze and pills and this and that. And meanwhile, like our whole emotional reality is giving us indigestion. It's giving us, you know, all
Blockage.
kinds of
Yeah.
issues
Blockages.
because we're not allowing ourselves to feel.
Mm. And I think even with diet, like they tend to focus on everything but the salts and the minerals. And when you're talking about an electrical system, the salts and the minerals are the most important, right? So
Yes, exactly. You need to have that mineral content to transfer electrical signaling.
of course they tell us don't eat salt, don't eat salt,
Yeah,
give you a heart attack. You know, I mean, but we
I
need it.
know.
Like without salt, you can't function. Your battery goes flat. You know, so um, now
Exactly.
with tuning forks, I looked in. Obviously, you know, I've got injuries and that, so I've been looking in. Like, do all tuning forks work? Are they good and bad tuning? You know, I don't even know how they make them, but what's the deal with tuning forks? Because there is a lot. You know, there's a obviously you can buy a set for $20 and you can buy a set for $500. So yeah, do they all work
Yeah.
or yeah, what's the deal there?
No, you really don't all work. You know, just like if you're a serious carpenter, you're not going to go buy your tools at the dollar store.
Yeah,
Right? I
exactly.
mean, if you just need like a household hammer, okay, that's fine. But if you're serious about what you're doing, you're going to invest in good tools. You get what you pay for with tools. And so if you buy a $12 tuning fork off of Amazon, it's going to be useless for sound healing, quite frankly. You know,
Mm,
I've done a lot of research, bought a lot of other manufacturers' forks, tried them out. I make my own line of tuning forks,
okay.
and they're actually made out of a special alloy that I co-created with my manufacturer. Because when I started combing through the field and the forks started going into heavy distortion, what I found was is that the integrity of the metal would break down, and just like guitar strings wear out, my forks were wearing out. And so the manufacturer was basically like, our forks aren't made to do what you're doing with them. That's just, like a lot of people just activate forks and just listen to them or kind of
Yeah.
hold them over the
More of,
body.
yeah,
But I was like,
self-help.
oh, this was, this terrible, horrible experience of your dad beating your mom that you were watching. And you're like, ah, it's just like really distorted. And so we worked together for a year and a half, almost 2 years, where he made me all these different alloys and gauges. And I used all of them. And it was basically the last man standing that lasted the longest became my custom alloy. So my unweighted forks are like almost twice as expensive as something that you might get on Amazon.
Yeah.
Now, I don't make a 432 hertz fork. But people are always asking me, they're like, what's 432 versus 440? And I'm like, well, first of all, that's about music, and I'm not a musician, and I don't even use the musical scale. So don't ask me about that.
Okay.
But I decided to get a 432 fork. I got it from another manufacturer. I took it out of the pouch, I striked it 3 times, and I threw it away because it sounded like garbage. I was like, I can't use that. That's not a clear, pure, true tone. Right.
Yeah.
So mine are just like really just bright and clear and strong. They ring for a really long time. Like this is a very high quality tool built to, somebody, a professional in the field for decades who curated that for you. You can buy, this is a weighted tuning fork. So for
Yes.
example, on your injury, Campbell, this would be more what you would want is a tuning fork with weights, because the weights, you can't hear it, right? I mean, you can kind of hear it, but not really. But what it does is it drives the vibration down out the handle. So we use these on the body.
Oh, you touch them on spots. Okay.
Yeah, you put them, like all around.
Wow.
Your third eye, like your chest, right? And then I developed, I already put them all away, I think, different accessories to go. Let me just grab them because they're kind of cool to see. Although if people are watching in Australia, they're going to get upset about like the expense and the
Postage.
shipping and the customs. Like it's crazy. I need a distributor in Australia, but I haven't gotten there yet. So this is a boot that attaches on the
cool.
end. It's
Yeah.
a little boot so that way when you're poking it, you're not poking with the stem, right? Because that's kind of small and sort of pokey. And then I've also created an amplifier boot. So this one's got these little divots. And when the sound goes through that, it amplifies like, wow, it's really strong. So like, that's what I would use the amplifier boot. And then I also made a handle extender. So this just makes the handle bigger and easier to hold. People have big hands or arthritis, but it also makes it kind of easy to like, kind of get into these spots.
And so is
So,
that,
do you want to try something? Go
sorry.
ahead.
Yes. I was just going to say, do they have to be a specific frequency, or can you just like, do you have to buy a
Okay.
set, or will that one work on any? Yeah.
Yeah. So the frequencies that I use, so my unweighted forks are based in what's called the solfeggio frequencies. Originally, I got the C major scale, but then I got the solfeggio frequencies, and I found them to be brighter, clearer, more uplifting. The C scale started to become sort of dull and dumb and muddy to me after a while. It's like, I'm not really digging this. And so I just switched to the solfeggio. But then I started to create my own line of weighted tuning forks based on the Schumann resonance.
Okay.
So the Schumann resonance, you probably know what it is, Campbell, but for people who don't, it's the background pulse that is in our plasmic environment, right? This is an electromagnetic plasma that we're breathing. And there is a continual background pulse of around 7.83 hertz going on. And this is our brain when we're in a sort of the alpha theta cusp of meditation and awareness, where the mind is quiet and your consciousness starts to kind of spread out into unity consciousness. You start to just become aware of the expanded self. And you can't make a tuning fork that's 7.83 hertz because it would be like 4 feet long, right? The lower the frequency, the longer the fork.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's really low, right? But what I decided to do was to make the harmonics, and I got prototypes of the harmonics made. So 7.83 times 8 was the first one that I had made. So 62.64 hertz. Now, prior to that, I'd been using 128 hertz weighted fork. And that's a very standard one. You can buy a weighted 128 hertz fork on Amazon for 15 bucks, right? And somebody had given me one. So I had been using that. When I started using the 62.64, I was astonished at how much more lively it was in the body. The way that I described it in the beginning is, you know how some cats are like really cool cats or like unusual cats? They're like different cats.
Yeah.
And then there's ordinary cats, right? I think dogs are the same way, but definitely cats. And so I was like, this is like the cool cat of tuning forks. Like it's just, it would seem to just go in intelligently and kind of go wherever it needed to go. Whereas the 128 would just be like, you know, the 62.64 would be like,
Okay.
so it was like right off the bat, like that one was cool. Then I got the seventh made so that I could create a binaural beat of 7.83 hertz. So if you hold one on either side of your head, your brain creates the difference. So the difference between the two, 7.83, gets you into that alpha brainwave state, calms you down immediately. So I use them. That's called the Schumann pair. Then I created the sonic slider, which is 7.83 times 12. And I also got the 11th and 13th harmonics made, both of which are horrible. They're horrible. Like the 11th one just like knocks you out and makes you feel dead.
That's
And the
because it's
13th is
Freemasonic.
completely neurotic, jarring.
Twin
Right?
pillars, right?
But the 12th is like, yeah, this one, the 12th, is so universally soothing,
Oh,
pleasing. Like everybody loves this frequency. This frequency is
that's
like,
interesting.
oh, yes, that is exactly what I need.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
12 is, of course, a three.
So
And yeah.
then I created, yes, exactly.
Mm.
Then I created a pair of weighted forks based on the Fibonacci sequence.
Um,
So I'm using the 11th and 12th positions in the Fibonacci sequence, which are 89 hertz and 144 hertz. Now, with the Fibonacci sequence, if you divide this sum by that sum, you end up with phi. 1.618, the golden mean, the golden ratio, truth, beauty, harmony, order. And so when you use the Fibonacci pair of weighted forks, it informs the geometric template of your body. It reminds it of phi, and it helps to bring you geometrically back into order. So, whereas the Schumann pair works more with your body's electrical system because that's the electrical pulse of our environment. And so you want your electrical system to be harmonized to your environment. So we have an electrical system and we have an etheric geometric template, right? In these states of matter that we don't even learn about. We don't learn about ether. We don't learn about plasma. We don't learn about our electrical system. We certainly don't learn about our underlying geometry.
no,
But that is the blueprint, the
that's
geometry and the
everything.
electricity. That's what we want to have in order. You know,
Mm.
you can poke around on the physical level, but you're not dealing with the information that the body is built on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's basically, yeah, it's all about getting back to harmony and the way it's supposed to be, like trying to retune it, right? Every time you talk about the language is just there, isn't it? It's all in the language. They've sort of taken the meaning away from the language, I guess. Because when we look back in the past, everything's, fields and geometry and all this stuff, and everyone's like, what were these people doing? But it's probably a lot more, basic than I think we're probably trying to make it a lot more complex than it really was. They just understood the foundational stuff, you know. So sorry, I cut you off before.
And
What were you
that's all been
going to
hidden from
say?
us.
Try something? Oh, sorry, now I'm
Yeah.
cutting off again.
Oh, yes. Well, I thought, all right, why don't we could try to just do a little distance session on your
Yeah,
shoulder and arm, just a
I'm
few
into that,
minutes.
man. Anything
People could
healing,
kind of
I'm in.
see what it's like and how we can do this, a
Yeah,
recording.
so this is
So
another thing is
we'll treat your,
you can do it over distance, can't you? Which is very interesting. This
yeah. And I didn't think that that was possible. So people
mm.
asked me for years if I could do it at a distance. And I was always like, no, like dumb. This is physics, it's sound waves on the body. Like, how on earth would I do it at a distance? Like, what nonsense, right? Because I could be as arrogant and skeptical as the next person can.
Mm.
And so, uh, but when I wrote my master's thesis, one of the people that helped me with it was a fellow who's a doctor in California, an MD, who was very knowledgeable about energy medicine. And I had come across one of his publications when I was researching my thesis. And after I read it, I was like, this guy knows everything. Who is this? And I reached out to him and I told him about my work, and he became very interested in it. He helped me edit my thesis. And then he asked me to try a distance session on it. Now, I'm a researcher. I love experiments. And so even though I was extremely skeptical and I didn't think it would work, I was like, okay, let's give it a try. So he lay down on his treatment table in his office in California, and I pretended that he was on my table
Oh,
in
okay.
Vermont. And we did not have any open line of communication. We weren't on the phone. We were just connecting by intention. And so I approached the table like I would if somebody was there, and I started to move my forks through the field. And much to my amazement, the same pattern of energy and information that would show up when somebody was actually present appeared. And I was able to go through his whole field. I took notes and I was like,
And
okay, you have a lot of stress at this age, and
wow.
this organ isn't operating quite right, and you have inflammation in this area. This is your mom's personality, this is your dad's personality. I had a head injury when you was 5, you moved when you were 16. Like all of this stuff, that this language of vibration that I had learned, like that sound means a move. Like I just had figured that out, right?
Mm.
And so then I got on the phone with him when I was done and I went through my notes. And he said, Eileen, that is all exactly correct. I felt a state change while you were working on me. I feel lighter. And I took my blood sugar, my resting blood sugar, and it changed for the better. And I had to eat crow. I was like, oh, I guess you really can do this at a distance, right?
Wow.
I did I went into it skeptical. I was
Mm.
invested in it not working because I'd been saying that for years.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I discovered this. Well,
Mhm.
how the heck does that work? All right. Like that's kind of puzzling.
It is.
Um, but then, I started working on people at a distance. And in the beginning, I didn't have any line of communication open. And it forced me to learn the language of vibration even more deeply because I couldn't say to somebody, was that a car accident that you had at this age? I had to like be like, I know that sound, that's a car accident. I know that sound, that's whatever. I mean, every single thing you experience is vibration, and it doesn't have words. It's vibration
Mm.
in
Like
your record.
sound. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then I started working through Zoom and over the phone after that. But then I started working with groups because what happened was when Tuning the Human Biofield came out, because I could work at a distance now, I was getting calls from all over the world. And all of a sudden, my very full practice in the middle of nowhere in rural Vermont, which started to just like spill out all over the place. Because I was helping people. People come in
Getting
pain, they come in with
results.
emotional upset, whatever people ailed them. Like I'm a good problem solver. This is solving their problems. They tell their friends. Uh, so I realized that if I could work distance one-on-one, I might be able to work distance in groups. And I started doing that, which is like, who on earth would ever sign up for group distance tuning fork healing? Like, how ridiculous does that sound, right? I
Mm.
certainly would never sign up for anything like that. Um, but I had so many people who wanted to work with me that I was like, well, let's try an experiment. And I did a handful of group experiments and got tons of feedback. I was like, this worked. What did you feel? What did you notice? And people were like, yes. So it was a way for me to treat a lot more people in a way that was more affordable to them. And I kind of transitioned away from one-on-one sessions into these groups and then even just recordings. And so people were finding that they could listen to a recording of me working on over an empty table and experience a state change from that recording, which is far out, you know?
Yeah, and I guess it
So I
harks
have
back to the
hundreds of
everything is
recordings at
one,
my
you know?
website.
Sorry, what was that?
Everything is one. That's how it works, Campbell.
Mm.
Everything is one. It's
Mm.
nature has no kernel or shell. She's everything at once. If I exist out here, if you can find information about me out here, well, yeah, I've got a plasma membrane, but like if I'm out here, I'm everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm connected to the one. I'm made of spun light. It's all one field of light. So I can find your information right here.
That's
Here.
insane, isn't it? The world is definitely
Yeah.
not what they
It's
taught
pretty
us it
wild. And when I
was.
work with groups, no, no, because when we start to understand our essential connectivity and like what we can do just in the ether alone,
Mm.
it's powerful.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of stuff coming out about this,
Yeah,
quantum, they're calling it quantum healing, and I don't know if you've heard of med beds, but there's a lot of this distance healing and frequency coming out. So I mean, everything's, it's the apocalypse, right? Everything's being unveiled. We're starting to sort of see what's really going on here and getting some good answers too, I think. And that's the other thing is, they love us to focus on everything's so bad, everything's so bad, everything's so, but really, I think when you look at it properly, there's so much good coming out at the moment, so much. We've just got to, focus on the good stuff and use that to action rather than, listen to the MSN, right?
absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I've observed is that, you know, when I go back in time, like if I'm working with a person or a group that are in a particular age group, and I go back and I'm like, okay, this person was born in the 50s, and I can kind of tune into the vibe that was generated there and the energy of that time versus now. And I remember one time having this huge insight that there's way more light now. There's just way more ambient light. There's way more potential. There's so much opportunity for enlightenment. Right? To me, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is realizing that you have an electrical system, that you are inwardly illuminated, and that is the same light that powers the sun or lightning bugs or lightning or anything that's out there that's living. It's the same light that's in you.
Mm.
And being able to rest in that light and feel that connection to the one light, like that's enlightenment. It's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
darn simple. The
Yeah,
only way
yeah.
that you can enjoy the bliss of it is if you've gotten the noise out of your signal, the ants out of your pants, the dysregulation out of your system of all of the times you've ever been dysregulated that are in your memory banks, that are in your field. As long
Mm.
as you have all this noise in your signal, it's pretty hard to go into that bliss connection state because you're associated with your pain body, not your light body.
Yeah,
And so the
nice.
more you dissolve the pain body, this baggage that you're carrying around, these shadows or whatever, they alchemize. They go from being heavy and stuck and dark and leaden to becoming light and flowing. They feed your light body.
Right.
And to me, it's pretty simple. Like that's enlightenment. And
Yeah.
there's so many tools and techniques and people out there who are doing this work. They're doing ancestral healing, they're doing their own healing. So much healing has happened in the world in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And
I
it
agree.
used to be like things took a long time and to get through and they were heavy. And now I'm seeing healing happen like this with people. Just
Oh, good.
it's amazing,
All right,
really,
heal me.
because so much heavy lifting has already
I
been
like
done.
that.
Yeah. We're the karmic cleanup crew.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. Yeah, that's the other thing.
Hmm.
She's why we're all down here at this time, right? Getting messages of what to do. It's like we're
Yeah,
all
for
here
a
for a
reason.
reason. Mm. All right.
Yeah. All right. So what I was going to
Tuning.
suggest is that we would just take a minute and I'll tune into your shoulder and anybody else who has pain anywhere who's watching, you can let the sound come to you too and just see what you notice. So when I work with somebody one-on-one, I start just by listening. That's all I do. I mean, your organizing intelligence is going to do the work and you and I are just going to kind of watch it. So just see what you notice. That's all you have to do. Just see what
Oh,
you notice. Okay.
yep.
All right. So start off, just close your eyes, take a moment, take a baseline assessment of how you're feeling in this moment, where your pain patterns are, discomfort, what your breathing is doing, and just sort of do an assessment of inner space. And then start to bring your breath a little bit deeper into your belly. Take a few breaths to really get your breath all the way down into your pelvic floor and really feel that belly fill up. And then on your next exhale, I want you to breathe down your legs and out your feet. So when you exhale, do it with a little sound and just send the energy of it down into your feet. So this is what we call a centering and grounding breath in biofield tuning. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tune in and just listen to your signal. Okay, so there's a few things going on here. One is that I'm getting really hot. So that's often a sign of that there's emotion in there, that there's like feeling, there's like friction that isn't that's well starting to discharge in like the moment we start. So I experience sometimes very profound temperature changes when I'm working. I could hear the impact of the right and the reverberation of that in your signal. But what that did was it created a kind of other signal that's like so what's happening is that the flow of electricity like down through your neck and into your arm is not going like whoosh, it's going whoop, 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 whoop. So
Okay.
there's like the impact and the jam up and then now the right. So now can you relate to that
Yeah,
kind of just
yeah. I get
description?
heaps of shooting pains and random pains, and yeah, sort of like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's just because it's tense, right? And so
mm,
electricity is not flowing
it's not
easily.
flowing.
And so it probably
Mm.
builds up and then shoots.
Yeah,
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 exactly. So
yeah.
now we're going to come back and we're just going to, I'm going to use a different frequency. So that was 144 hertz. I'm going to use 174 hertz right now. And we're just going to watch what your body does with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I work, I get kind of wiggly and jiggly. Sometimes I start making strange sounds. Like my body just becomes kind of like a tuning fork too.
Yeah.
Uh, um, don't mind me. That's kind of hitting the pain and how the pain like cycles up. Like, whoa, it's kind of low and then it'll like cycle up and get really strong. And if you feel like moving, you can, but if you don't, then don't. But if movement starts to arise in you, then just let yourself follow it. Because it's really by shaking, right? There's a whole trauma release thing around like shaking off these patterns. When we're held in a particular pattern, shake it out. But me shaking also, like I shake for you. So you don't
Yeah,
necessarily
okay.
need to if you're not feeling it. It's in the pulsing. So that's starting to smooth out in there a little bit and starting to just relax down just a little bit more is starting to flow into the shoulder. There's a lot of like the growl of the inner critic of you like beating yourself up for being dumb and doing that, and your own kind of like self-punishment. So kind of like down on yourself and like down on the situation, kind of just a mental heaviness around it, right? It's kind of exhausting.
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to just on your next breath, take a nice big breath in and then exhale it down into the ground. And this next couple we're going to send right down the arm, the elbow, and down out the fingertips. Right, and you've been kind of mad at your arm. This is not working, right? So there's a feeling of like raw there. So you just want to send love to your arm, okay? Things only heal with love. We know that from like people telling jars of cooked rice that they hate them. That any kind of energy that we send, the Emoto's work or Veda Austin's work, if you've come across that, like we're mostly water. Water is very receptive, and it's super important that when we're healing, that we're just like, oh, my beautiful arm. I'm gonna love it. Don't give it bad vibes.
Okay.
All right, what are you noticing, Cambell?
It's going to be sort of calmer for sure. It's not so pulsy at the moment, and I just started wanting to move my shoulder that sort of rotated. So
Yeah.
no, it does definitely. It feels less tingly. I mean, it feels like electricity. That's the thing, which is this whole. And when I first did it, like you said, when you were saying it builds up and then shoots, literally, like I'd jump because it'd just go boom, and this was like lightning would go down my arm, but it was like it would hit a point that it couldn't get through, and it'd just be like bang. But no, it definitely feels smoother at the moment. Yeah, that's the right word.
Yeah. Right. So there was tension, right, from the impact, and it was creating this shooting thing, right? And so it was just a couple minutes of we just got it to kind of soften and relax and not feel so, right? Just that's it. Help
And
you
that's it,
relax.
because it's a
Right? And a full
frequency.
hour, gets you to relax a lot more.
And so the
Yeah.
more we do it, it changes the frequency, and so that side of my body will tune into what it should be, and that's basically healing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
That's basically healing. I mean, it's allowing it to relax back into its anatomically correct organization where it faces itself. But any place where we're jammed up, that electrical current, that flow, it's all, in fluids too, like everything that's supposed to be like taking away waste and bringing in nutrients. Like, it's like, can't get to that neighborhood.
Yeah, because there's no
So,
flow, so it doesn't matter what we're putting in physically, it's not going to be able to get to the affected area, right? Yeah, that's a good point.
exactly, because of the jam up
And of course, what
that's
are the
going
medical
on.
industry?
So,
They just want to cut those
so
bits off, don't they? Oh, your arm doesn't work, we'll cut it off.
yeah, they do, and I get so upset, when I look at the way that the medical industry mismanages healthcare. First, do no harm, and they seem to have missed that point altogether. I was working with somebody the other day who had arrhythmia, and she said they wanted to go into her heart and electrocute it to stop her arrhythmia. And I was like, please don't do that. Like, let me help you. And it was just over Zoom, and just listen to her heart. Well, her heart was all tense. It was all like,
Mm.
and we just helped her heart to relax. And I also noticed as soon as I started tuning into her that she wasn't breathing. And this is a big thing
Yes.
where a lot of people's issues come from is really the breath is key. And so,
Yep.
the work of Wim Hof, anybody who's doing
Yep.
breath work, like we stay regulated when our breath is regulated. And when our breath becomes unregulated or your diaphragm's jumping around and you have anxiety, right? You're not like, ah, right?
Yeah.
You're just
Yeah.
not doing that.
I remember.
And so
Mhm.
when we don't breathe enough, then the whole circulatory system is not getting enough juice. We pretty much run on our breath. So if you think about it, right, you can go for weeks, people go months, some people claim to not really eat at all. So the primary source of our electric juice is not coming from
Food.
food.
Yeah.
You can go days without liquids, right? You can only
Mm.
go a few minutes without breath, and then your current stops. And it's because we're breathing in a plasma.
Yeah.
Oxygen has free, okay, allegedly, they say electrons don't exist, but as I understand it,
Yep.
oxygen has free electrons. And so when you breathe in oxygen, it's that electrical charge in the air that is attaching electromagnetically to the hemoglobin in your blood, which is magnetic. So there's this like a
Of
little
course.
magnetic bond. And now your blood that was like dark red has become bright red. It's got more juice in it, it's got more light in it. And it's that light, that electricity that gets distributed throughout your body. And when you don't have that continual stream of electricity coming in through your breath, you die because that is what you are running on. And so, if you are
Yeah.
holding your breath, if you are breathing shallowly, you are cutting off life force from yourself continuously. You're blocking your electrical current from staying strong.
Yeah.
So, this whole idea that she needed to go in and be shocked, no, she needed to relax. She needed to become mindful about her breath. We needed to get the chambers of her heart to stop being in a bunch and settle down. And she felt so much better. And she hasn't had any kind of arrhythmia experience since then. And that was weeks ago.
Nice.
Right? Myocarditis. And so many of the things that people are suffering from are rhythmic, they're electrical, and we correct them so elegantly with sound through their field. I had so many people tell me over the years, like, I got more done in 3 sessions with you than I did in years of therapy. So it's not just medical stuff that this can help, say, take the place of, but that's not really the right word, but but also mental health, emotional health. Like
Compliment.
it's
Yeah.
all vibrational, it's all tonal, it's all patterns, and
This
it can
is,
be regulated pretty
yeah.
simply.
I often wonder about all this, psychiatry stuff because they just get you to focus on the problems a lot, don't they? I mean, can that be good? If we focus on problems, do we make those blockages bigger? Do you think? Like, is that what's
Yeah, I mean, it's all we're doing is firing off the pattern that's
we
there,
just spiraling
right?
down, right?
Healing
Yeah,
is really about yeah, it's about telling a new story. It's about
yeah,
telling a new story in
yeah.
a new pattern.
Nice. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So,
Otherwise, you're just rehashing the same old,
and
right?
that's just yeah, you're just getting used to that same old perspective and living with that same old charge on the same, things. And yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Like, I think people
Yeah.
hold on way too much. I mean, I guess that's what all this shadow work stuff that people talk about is letting go of the past and understanding it's doesn't really affect us unless we let it, right? Well, actually, I suppose that's probably not true. It stays in our energy field until we deal with it. But I
Until
mean,
we deal with it. And
because you see
there
little
are
kids
plenty
like
of other modalities out there.
I remember I was talking to someone and she was like, you see little kids and they'll next to mum and dad and they'll go to say something and mum and dad are like, shut up. And the kid's like, and it's a breath thing, like, and it's like, and it's like that's a blockage, right? They take it in and shove it out in their energy field. And as soon as people's emotion change, it's always the breath. It's always the way they breathe. They speed up when they're anxious. I mean, it's just, I
Mhm.
kind of feel, I don't know, like the more I learn, I kind of just think, how did I not see that? Because they kind of tell us everything, don't they? Or the information's there. They just don't tell us how it works. Because we can find all this information if we look for it, really. But they just go, oh no, don't look there. Just go to the doctor. Don't look there. But it is actually, I think all the information is there for those who wish to see it. You know, what's that saying? Seek and you shall find.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. Seek and you shall find. I mean, when I started off with this, I knew nothing. I was like, what the heck is going on
Well,
here? And
yeah.
I sought out the answers and I found them. And of course, it's just a working hypothesis. I don't claim to like this is so, but it fits in. It makes sense. I mean, this is something when
Mm.
people read my books and they're exposed to this work, everybody says the same thing. They're like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
it
that's the
does make
main thing.
sense.
It
And we
does.
want things to make sense, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you've got results, as well, which is another big thing. So, all right, we've been going about an hour and a half. I would love to talk more, but I think, oh God, we've been going 2 hours. Wow, that went quick. Um, I'd love to have another talk, but yeah, I won't keep you any more today. But I definitely would love to get you back and get into, a bit more of that. So like I said, I'll leave the links for your channel and everything below. Do you have a website as well? Where do people find you
Yeah.
if they want to get
We have
more?
a website, bio, biofieldtuning.com.
Cool. And if
And we
sorry, you go.
no, go ahead.
Is that where they can get if they want to get tuning forks and that's all on your website, is it?
Mhm. Yeah, there's also
Okay.
biofieldtuningstore.com. And you can get tuning forks, you can listen to the recordings. I have a bunch of free recordings. So if you're skeptical, you can try the free ones first. Um, and then we also train students
Yeah,
in
you
it,
do
and
talk,
it's
yeah.
all done virtually. So you can take a class. It's a really great method to practice. Like I have
Mm,
really, really enjoyed my work. It's taught me so much about the human mind, about the human spirit, about the human body, about like so many people I would be working and I kind of figure out like, oh, this is like this imbalance. And I was like, oh, I do that. And so, it's really taught me so much about what it means to be a healthy, functional, regulated human being and
mm,
helped me to do that. And it's not like massage, you give a massage to somebody, like it's all about them. But when you do a tuning on somebody, you get tuned too. And you get one of the things that I love about it the most is that underneath the noise in the signal, the pain body, the self-limiting beliefs, the traumas, the stories, underneath all of that noise in the signal, everybody has a true tone that is beautiful, that is harmonious, that is brilliant, that is great, and that is amazing.
mm.
And when I first started seeing that in people, and I was like, this person is great and amazing, this person is great and amazing, I'm like, oh my God, like we're so much more than we've been told. We've been told that we suck, basically, that
Mm.
we're a cancer on the planet, that we're guilty of global climate change. Just like we're made to feel so bad about being
Mm.
human. And even like the story of original sin, like you were
Yeah.
toast before you were even born.
Yeah,
You didn't
no chance,
bother.
no
And
chance.
so we're all walking around feeling guilty and feeling ashamed of ourselves and feeling
Mm.
not worthy. And so we overindulge that noise and we don't allow, nobody says to us, wow, I can see into your soul and you're just so beautiful and amazing and great and illuminated in this way. Right.
Mm.
But tuning has allowed me to see the amazing beauty of the human spirit that everybody has. And it's these areas of tension that make you come out sideways. That it's just like, yeah, that's not the best version of you. But let's like relax all that down and then wow. And people become more creative. Their relationships become better. They become better parents. Their fuses become longer. They get stuff done. They bust clutter. Like all of the best parts of them start to come to the
That's right.
fore.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so it's been a real gift to be able to see people for who they really are underneath and to help them to get there, you
Mm.
know? And so it's a super rewarding practice. So
It is,
it's just
yeah.
something for people to
And
consider when they want
it's
to learn
so
it.
needed at the moment, isn't it? Like we're right in that time where everyone's looking
Yeah.
for options and
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, no, I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean,
We're
yeah.
right in that time. And I'll tell you, I have kids. I have two sons who are 22 and 25. And they're enjoying the fruits of all of my labors, all the healing, all the learning, all the figuring it out the hard way. They have degrees of emotional intelligence and relational communication that I could not, there's no way that I could have had that at their age, right?
Mm.
So it's our generation, Campbell. Like there's a group of us here. Like none of our parents did shadow work.
No,
Come on.
I know, right? Where did
I
we learn
remember
this
my
stuff?
yeah, nobody's parents did it, right?
Right.
It's just like there's something about us and this time and why we're here and what we're doing. And
Mm.
anything that we do to make ourselves more whole, more coherent, more regulated is affecting the whole. It really, really is, locally and non-locally.
Yeah, I totally agree. Wow, well, there we go. And just a big thank you as well for sticking it out and doing all your research and bringing this out because, like I said, back in the 90s, there was nothing, right? And you had to put up with all the crap, no doubt, and keep going. So, big thanks on that. And, the books and that. So obviously everyone go check out, I'll put the links below, go check out the website, the YouTube channel, there's books there. And I saw that you even did some videos where you literally just tune, you just sit there, and so people can go and sort of listen to the tunes and get a bit of healing, right? Get in tune. Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah. In
definitely.
fact, I started doing Sonic Sundays every Sunday
Sonic
at 10 a.m.
Sundays,
Eastern.
nice.
I go live. Yeah, yeah, I do like a little, talk on a particular topic and then tuning.
Nice.
And those are free. And there are a bunch of free tunings too on YouTube
Mm,
that can really help. I mean, surprisingly, people are
yeah.
like, "Wow, I was in pain and now I'm not," and that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So,
Yeah,
if you're skeptical or if you want to see if it works or try to just go and have a listen, there's books and everything, and the world needs more healers. So if you're drawn, go and check out Eileen's course as well. So thank you. That was really good. We've hit the 2 hour mark, so I'll let you go now, but I definitely think we need to continue this conversation, at some point in the future. And like I said before, we'd love to get you on maybe with some of the free energy to start hiring people, and we can sort of go into how your work sort of, crosses into what we're looking at as far as, the free energy and the cathedrals and all that kind of stuff. Because I think, this is all the information that it's all converging. This is all what we need, what we want. So it would be great to reconnect on that.
yeah, that sounds great. Well, I'll look forward to that.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on. This has been fun.
Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Sounds good. Take care. Bye,
Take care.
everybody.
Bye.
Postal Address.